And bang! We're back. Um, I only mentioned this on Twitter, and I know people are getting off of Twitter. I'm moving to get off of Twitter. I felt crappy on Saturday. Not sick, just had a really terrible day the day before, and it led to a really terrible night, and I just was not up to it in the morning. So we just dumped the show. But I'm back on Sunday. I had a nice Sunday. When I was out on Sunday, I noticed some pork bellies that were dated the next day. So I didn't pick one up. What I did is I went back on Monday, hoping to see them in the discount bin on the last day. I could grab a pork belly and then I could stick it in a marinade and we'd have it ready to pull out and do something fun with it today. Well, I guess they all sold. I suspect that some enterprising employee also saw that they were going off the next day, waited for those discount stickers to go on them, and grabbed them as soon as they were in there because they went pretty quick and there weren't that many of them. So that's my best guess. But while I was there, I found I'll get it out of all this extra plastic. I wrapped it in plastic because it was a little bit juicy. Some very nice looking beef shank sections in the discount bin. Usually the ones in the discount bin look pretty bad and they've got a especially large bone. They're somewhere near the top where the bone flares out. These have a nice compact bone, nice big sections of meat with the marbling in there. Um, you don't see them quite this nice in the discount bin very often. So I grabbed that. Ages ago, you might remember, you might not. Ages ago, I made Bulalo Kare-Kare, which I'm positive I'm pronouncing wrong because I don't know Filipino pronunciations. But I made this ages ago and posted pictures. I don't believe I did it live on the show. I'm not sure if I did it live on the show. I can't remember. I'll have to go back and review. I know I did it ages ago, and I know I posted pictures. I think I did it off show though. And it was quite good. I'm doing it again. Basically, I'm doing it again. If you didn't see it the first time, we're back. We're gonna have to prep up this beef shank though, because this is not how the Filipinos have their beef shanks. Um, I had a decorative. I have to move my decorative countertop over here with all of our vegetables. Um, this is not what Filipinos think of, at least from my research, when you say beef shank. I guess they don't usually come sliced into sections like this. Instead, they come as a whole muscle. They take these individual pieces off as whole muscles, and then it gets cut up. So we're going to take it off the bone and kind of section it up, which is also going to speed up our cooking a bit. Let me get some bowls ready. And get rid of our decorative start here. I've brought back the black sheet because we have uneven lighting. What I needed to get is an under cabinet light to just give me light right here. Then I can balance for that. That's the ultimate solution. I also couldn't find baby bok choy, so we're using full-size bok choy, but like one of the smaller ones that's a little bit green. Maybe we'll throw that in and call it a baby. That also needs to go to the side for the moment. I just, when I look at it, the colors are okay. We don't need the corrector anymore. It's just that this part of the screen becomes very blown out, and it's because there's this uneven lighting, which is the underlying problem anyways. We have uneven lighting. Oh, well. So step one is going to be getting this guy out of its package. And we're going to give it a sear. I want to get the pan that we're going to cook all this in ready to go. Oh, I knew that was going to be a problem. I forgot to put my mic on before I put my apron on. I forgot to put my mic on before I put my apron on, so the cord is outside of my apron, and it just caught on the button on my cuff there. So I think we might actually. We're going to mute for a sec while I rework this the mic so it's not dangling and catching on things. You can watch, but you can't listen. And we're back. So we aren't catching on things. Fun. So I've got my deep pan for this. So we're gonna have a lot of surface area to work with instead of a deep pot. In part because this one has a lid, which I will retrieve now. But also, I think I'll be able to push stuff around in this pan more easily. And we aren't making like a big soup, so we don't need a ton of depth. That's our fitted lid. Having a fitted lid is nice for things like this. And we're gonna start it with coconut oil as well, because I think that is a good flavor component that we otherwise aren't getting in here. And because I have had this coconut oil for a while and would like to use it up. I've been on a big kick of using stuff up lately. Which is good. And I'm discovering some things that, like, oh, I should use that up. And then when I go and try it, it's not good anymore because I put it off too long. So now I'm being more dedicated with going back and looking through things that I haven't used in a while, trying to use them up, and also to see if they're even worth saving at this point. So coconut oil is a high heat fat, so I'm going to actually turn that on now and let it melt because I'm not concerned about it burning at the moment. And then we're going to get this in here. We're going to get the meat out of here because we need to sear it off and then start the simmering it because shank, if you're not familiar with shank, these are cross sections of, oh, I forget if shank is above or below the knee. These are cross sections of part of the leg. So they get a ton of work on the live cattle, and as a result are very, very tough, but are also very, very flavor. They also have quite a lot of connective tissue in them, which means that we have some cleaning and trimming to do to get them working out. I'm not going to discard the bone, because the bone also has a lot of flavor, but I want to get the meat away from it. And a rare instance of actual blood in our meat. Usually the red liquid that you find in meat is not blood, but is what's it called? Intracellular fluid, intramuscular fluid. It's a fluid that's in the tissues, not blood. But the middle of that bone right there is bone marrow, and that definitely some blood leaking out, just a little bit. And you get that around bones, especially the long bones, because in mammals, um, that's where the blood comes from. Blood cells are manufactured in the marrow. And also, I don't know if you can tell, maybe this might be a little bit gross for people. There's a big old artery right there, running right next to the bone. We're gonna cut that out. I don't want that in my finished dish, because it'll be chewy, more than anything. Oh, you can really see that one. Same artery, different different level of it. I'm just going to discard those. Save your bones. We're going to make use of the bones. We're going to break these muscles up and get rid of some of this connective tissue around the outside of them to give us some nice sort of chunks. Because this outer surface here is, you may be familiar with silver skin. I don't think that's literally what this is, but this is mostly elastin as opposed to collagen. And elastin does not break down in boiling. It does not break down in cooking. It contracts and hardens up. So you really have to get it off of there. And that's what makes silver skin so crappy, is, for those of you who are familiar with silver skin, it's a connective membrane that is made up of largely elastin. And especially in the case of shank, it's a circle. It goes all the way around the outside of the shank, making it contract really weirdly when you cook it. Because the muscle doesn't contract as much as the exterior, so it kind of folds in on itself. Let me keep my trash open over here. Come on, get started. And then you should be able to pull it. Well, this one's much tougher than the other one. You notice the first one, I just got it started and then pulled and it came off. This one, oh, there it goes. I am losing some of the fat, and I still have some silver skin to get off of these guys. Do if you wanted to string a bow, ever in a survival situation and you need a bow, use this stuff that I'm cutting off right now. Any old animal will have tons of this stuff in them because it's what holds them together. And it is tough stuff. To the point where even the knife has a hard time with it. And in this case, what it's doing is it's holding the muscles together. It's wrapped around each muscle, holding them into their nice muscular bundles. It's especially bad on a steak, something that you're not going to want to cook really intensely because it will never break down in that time period. It doesn't typically break down even on stews just because it's not hot enough and it's not enough time. The stuff is very, very, very robust. I'm making these chunks a bit bigger than bite size because they'll shrink up. And then they'll be bite size in the end when they're done. But I want them to be pretty chunky. I still want them to be chunky. Like, I'm also, you may have noticed I was talking about getting rid of all that membrane, and then I started cutting, and then I stopped getting rid of the membrane. It was frustrating me. Cut that one in half. I do want these a little bit smaller than I typically would because I am not planning on braising this for 3+ hours like I have done in the past. We're going to discard that chunk. It was mostly a fat chunk, but I don't think I want to take the time to render down big wads of fat either. Speaking of which, actually, there's one right there that I also don't really want to take the time to render out. Small fat, fine. Big fat, I'm not going to take the time. It's also hard fat. This is the different kinds of fat. And this was the hard stuff. Don't need to wash my hands yet. Let's pop over to the stove. I said stove. Our coconut oil is melted and flows like water. So what we need to do here is I'm going to start by putting in our bones and then the rest of it. Because I want the bone flavors to get in this. Even though I took the meat off the bones. There's a lot of flavor in a bone. Well, that's not right. Okay, well, now we wash our hands. while the meat gets started, we wash our hands. Then we will come back. I'm going to wash the knife and the cutting board right away as well, so that we don't have to deal with any meaty aftermath. But I am going to need to push these guys around. We're just going for some of this delicious surface browning. Which you cannot get in a simmer. It has to be high heat. Let's see how the bones are looking. Ooh, very good. I'm going to let the bones actually hang out right in the center. We can assemble the meat around them. Okay. Bones, beef shanks. Let's wash the board. Without the sponge, because I don't want to get meat juice inside my sponge. I know some of my friends just simply do not use sponges, full stop. I'm a big fan of the scrubby sponges. The scrubby surface gets things off of things. That was a poorly constructed sentence. The scrubby surface gets things off of things. And I also typically like to put the soap into the sponge and then wash from there rather than soaping the thing. Because I feel like you, maybe I'm imagining it, but I feel like you lose less soap down the drain that way. Okay, we're all washed up. Phrasing. The meat is getting some nice surface browning and starting to render out itself, the bits of fat that are in there. We're also starting to render out the marrow. I'm going to flip this guy back in either of these bone sections. Now, I've got some, actually, I've got some, no, I don't, I used that up. I wisely used that one up. So I don't have any liquid beef stock. It's good, because that doesn't keep once you've opened it. So I'm glad I did think ahead and use that up. So I've got some beef bouillon that I'm going to add to this to beef it up. We don't need a ton. Let me briefly peek at how much weight I had here. 1.5. So 3 pounds. So we're basically doing a half. I've got a reference recipe up because I have made this, but it's been a while and it's not a cuisine I'm incredibly familiar with. So I'm going to use reference. So 1 beef bouillon cube just to amp up the beefiness a bit. And how much water? Doesn't say, just add water. Enough water to cover. Okay. Oh, add... Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad I glanced at the recipe. Because the meat, which is searing, actually needs to come out once I've got a good sear on it. Which we don't quite have a sear that I would call good on all of these pieces. But we're getting there. Which is fine, because I am going to prep our garlic and onion, because garlic and onion go in here as part of the flavor base. My garlic is sprouting, because it is spring. The meat is very tough, so I don't think we're in danger of overcooking it on the short term. So let's get out get out your finest and most sprouted of garlics. Typically you want to use garlic before it sprouts, because the sprout is extracting nutrients from the bulb, which saps some of the flavor. The sprout itself, some people call bitter. I don't think I've ever noticed that. I think it just tastes kind of like green onion, but garlicky. So it's weaker garlic, essentially. If your garlic sprouts, it's just less flavorful garlic. So that being said, we'll just add more. It does make it really hard to use your fancy garlic rolling silicone tube. That big old sprout stalk gets in the way. The curse of spring, of course. Last year's garlic. The garlic was fine all winter long, but now it's warm. Humidity's coming up. The garlic's noticed. Never forget, a lot of our plants we eat alive. Well, we cook. They're alive when we cook them. Like a lobster. Of course, if your garlic is sprouting, you could take these sprouted cloves, separate them out, stick them in the ground, and grow more garlic, because that is how you propagate garlic easily. This is taking much longer than I expected it to. Which means I'm going to stop before I mash this garlic and go remove the beef from the heat so as to not overdo it. Get rid of those garlic papers. Okay. So debeef your pan. I'm leaving the bones in there because I would like to really give them the maximum time to render through the marrow core. Bone marrow is mighty tasty. It's just often very hard to get to. We have developed some good fond at the bottom as well. We're going to give these another flip. Ooh, they're very toasty on that side. They're very toasty on that side. Okay. We need the board and a knife. Take the little endy pieces off. The bottom end is where the roots will come out when if you let the garlic try to sprout. So don't cut that off if you're planning on having sprouted garlic or more garlic. We're doing the old crush and mince today instead of pulverizing it. Since it's going into a stew and it's going to have a lot of time to develop, should have prepped the garlic right away after I did the meat. But, well, the garlic's not going in right away. The garlic needs to go in a little bowl to rest. Because we want to crush, you always want to crush up your garlic before you need it to give it some time to rest and develop its flavors. Because once you get it on the heat, it'll stop developing that garlicky flavor, and you're stuck with whatever you've got at that point. So, onion first. I'm using a shortcut method by quartering it so that I can, in theory at least, grab a layer and just peel it away neatly, since I would like to get it into the pan post-haste. Let's go cut, cut. Wow, quiet day here on the old Twitch. Is it because the weather's turning nice? Everyone's outside? I bet. I bet that's a part of it. Okay. Our pan is burning. But that's fine. Turn the temperature down a little bit. It is a little bit burning, a little bit more than I wanted it to. I'm going to pull the meat bones so that I can aggressively saute. I worry that our fond has gone a little bit to the burnt end of fond. So hopefully that doesn't impact our flavor too much. We are going to have to be really careful with the pan this hot. Because the garlic will burn much faster than the onion. And I do not want to burn either the garlic or the onion, but I especially don't want to burn the garlic. We did not give our garlic a ton of time to rest either, so let's actually go ahead and put some water in it now. See if I can't loosen up that fond now before it's completely drowned. Oh, it's coming up pretty good. Notice how the liquid rapidly turns very, very brown. Oop, I've splashed it. That's because we are picking up all that crusty stuff that was stuck on the bottom of the pan. Oh, I know. The stock cube, of course. That's probably why things are burning. The stock cube melted down. Okay, that's looking good. There's no black bit. Like if it was actually burned when I put the liquid in and loosened it up like this, you'd see floating black bits because burned stuff doesn't dissolve into the water. It just dislodges and you get little black flecks in your broth, in your liquid. The fond will release and break down, will dissolve into the water, and you'll get that nice brown. If you do get burned bits, at this point, I would say you got to live with them. It would be too hard to skim them out. You might get them out a bit later when there's a lot more liquid in here, but it's going to be really tricky because they're going to be little tiny flecks. They're not going to be like big chunks. Okay, let's get the bones back in the middle and re-add all of our meat. Now, I'm unclear whether this meat will float or sink at this point. Nope. There's half of our bouillon cube. It's stuck to my meat. Put all this in here. The juices from the bowl also need to be in here, because they are good flavor. Okay. Heat's coming up. Put it back up on the heat. This might be hard to see, but this is an example of what we're trying to work out. So there's this ridge in some of these pieces that currently is like a partially translucent material. When it was raw, here you can really see it on this one. If the camera is picking it up, I'm not sure if the camera is picking it up. They were white streaks in the muscle when it was raw. They are currently unpleasantly chewy. And it's the main reason you can't use a cut like this as a steak. It just won't. It'll never break that stuff down. Okay. Supposed to add enough water to cover the meat. And our meat is in fact sinking, so that's the perfect amount. Okay, I'm gonna let those bones poke up in the middle. This now needs to come back to a healthy simmer and simmer away for the remainder of the project. Everything else will be added to this. I'm actually going to bring it up quite hot because I want to get it up to heat, up to temp quickly now so that it has the maximum time working away on it. Because shank is a, again, tough but flavorful cut. I would like to probably give it a full 2 to 3 hour braise, but I'm not putting you guys through that. I'm not putting myself through that again this time. So I'm going to get it up, heat it until it's nice and bubbly. We're going to heat it until it's nice and bubbly, and then we are going to move it to the back burner on medium-low so it can sit and bruttle away. While I move on to everything else. Oh, okay. Burner off, move, there. Should have just done it on the back burner. And pop a lid on it. We'll check on it periodically. But Felix, you are first. Wow. 45 minutes to get first. Welcome in. Welcome, welcome. I have just put our beef on to bruttle. We're going to move on to other ingredients. Welcome in. How's your day going? It's beautiful weather out there. It's a bit windy. Oh man, I frustrated myself. I broke a glass today, and it's one I only had one of. Well, I suppose which means I didn't ruin a set, but frustrating to break a glass. It was my nice whiskey glass, which was like $1 at the Goodwill, so it wasn't a big loss. But still, frustrating. I was checking the weather today, thinking, "Oh, it's so nice. Could I put my plants out? Because I don't want to transfer them back and forth a ton unnecessarily. Because it's so nice today. It's supposed to drop to freezing tonight, so I'm not putting the plants out. Starting tomorrow morning at like 8 a.m., like really early, the plants can just go out and probably stay for the duration of summer. But we're going to have one last night of below freezings. Sigh. I am prepping. I did not go out of my way to get the. Now, I have recently been informed that I've been calling them one of the least common names for them. I call them snake beans, but I guess the common English name for them is yard-long beans. They're basically green beans, but they're really like long. They're multiple feet long, and they're usually sold sort of coiled up. Uh, they taste just like green beans. That's an opinion, but they taste just like green beans. And this recipe wants me to section them up anyways and chop them into pieces this size anyways. So just get green beans. Um, uh, so yeah, the other we're prepping the other ingredients. All the rest of the ingredients in this stew are actually not stewed and are vegetables. The only element of this that is stewed is the meat itself, and just that's pretty much just because it has to be broken down. Um, the beans, eggplant, and bok choy are all going to be cooked rather gently and all separately, and then assembled into the stew toward the end. So they'll be semi-fresh. That's probably too many beans, but that's fine. I do have my reference recipe up. Where's my cursor? Reference recipe has 3 pounds of boneless beef shank. Well, I had a pound and a half of bone-in beef shank, so you can't find boneless beef. I've looked. Probably I could get it from a specialty butcher as a special order, but the standard beef shank for America is those sectioned slices with the bone in the middle. And all the pictures of this stuff from the Philippine recipes are unsliced full muscle that have been pulled off of the bones. They look like tenderloins, but small and really tough, um, which I think would be a really neat cut to have, but I guess Americans want their sections. We're going to take a peek at how vigorously this is boiling. It's boiling quite vigorously, so I'm going to turn it down because I want more of a hefty simmer than a vigorous boil. We're supposed to blanch the yard-long beans, blanch the bok choy, and rapidly fry the eggplant to brown it on either side. Oh, and we're supposed to make annatto. Not make annatto. We were supposed to use annatto. I picked up annatto literally for this recipe the last time I tried making it. So I've still got it because I haven't used it for anything else, and I kind of hate annatto. If you're not familiar with annatto, it's this, annatto seed. I'm going to use this up because I've got it, but I should have purchased powdered annatto, which is also called achiote. Because this stuff in its whole form, like this, is stupid hard to use. Let me get some of them out of the bag. Let me ask the recipe how much it wanted. A teaspoon. This stuff is stupid hard to use, and don't even bother with it, in my opinion. Just get the pre-ground stuff if you really want the annatto. So they're these little red seeds. They look like focus. No, it doesn't want to focus. They're these stupid little red seeds. They're about as hard as pebbles. You can't crack these with your teeth. They're so hard. You're supposed to steep them to get the color and flavor out of them, which we're going to do, but I'm not going to be happy about it. And last time I steeped them I poured the boiling water on them. This time I'm going to boil them in it because I felt like there wasn't hardly anything to them. But yeah, seeing if there's any tips about the annatto. No, this recipe even says use powder. Oh, it says it's a tablespoon of powder. Ugh, right. I hate these things. I hate these things. We're gonna cook them. We're gonna boil them in their stupid little red things. I should just use saffron for this. They do basically what saffron does, but they don't taste as nice. And I've got some saffron. Um, anyways, basically what they are is they're little red seeds that are too hard to eat. If you soak them in boiling water or hot oil, you extract the red from the surface, which gives you color, and that's how they're used. They provide color, and they supposedly provide flavor, but I don't think they taste like anything. I've tasted them, and I don't think they taste like anything. They are most famous for being the color, the orange color in cheddar cheese. Let's take another peek at our simmering meat just to see how. Oh, you're on the wrong side. Just to see how. It's still boiling quite vigorously, but I think I'm okay with it at that point. We could tick it down. The lid is helping it, but I think we're gonna probably leave it right where it's at and call that good enough. We're not salting it. So I've been a big fan recently. I like eggplant in general, but I've been a big fan lately of these long, skinny ones. They're often marketed as Chinese eggplant or something like that. It's just a different variety of eggplant. It's nothing particular Chinese about it. It's just a different variety of eggplant. You can get these anywhere. You can grow these anywhere. Um, in fact, they cost exactly the same as the more typical variety. Um, what I like about them, what I enjoy about these things, is that they don't have that bitterness that the big fat ones do. Why did I cut that straight? That should have been at an angle. You don't need to prep these nearly as much for use. In fact, I often don't do anything to them. I just throw them directly into stir fries and such as is. They still have a little bit of a plasticky exterior, but again, it's less than the big fat ones, so they're easy. They're just easier to use. I wouldn't use them for something like eggplant parm, because in that case you want those big slices. Um, but for like stir fries and such, go for it. I'm also, for a little while, I was calling eggplant aubergine in the British style, which they took from French. Um, until I learned that aubergine basically means egg fruit. I'm no expert on French, but I guess I can hear it. An egg is an œuf, something like that. Again, no expert on French. So now I'm just back calling them eggplants because screw it. Everyone calls them eggplants. they're some kind of weird starch fruit that just gets to be an egg. And heck, the little white ones look exactly like eggs. They look like fruit eggs growing on a plant. Oop. Let's hop over and look at our annatto. It has not yet started boiling, but the water is already turning yellow. We're going to have to strain those and then discard them because you can't eat them, which is another reason you should use the powder, because then there's nothing to discard because it's ground so finely that you can just drop it into your... You can just drop it in and it's fine. So actually, I think I want to do all the beans. I think we need some more beans. So we're returning to the beans while the annatto comes up to its boil. I am taking the ends off the beans. This is not strictly necessary, nor does it need to be done with a knife. They're quite easy to just snap off. The only part that you really have to get rid of is if you get one like this where it's still got stem on it. The stem's not edible. It's very, very hard. But the little tail, I just don't like the little tail. It's completely edible and it tastes exactly like bean. I just don't like the look of it. So there you go. I like green beans. I should eat green beans more often. I don't often go for green beans unless I have a specific recipe in mind, because I'm afraid I will forget to use them and they'll go off, which has happened more than once. I'm terrible about that. I've been trying to really get on top of the ball and not throw out stuff so often that I've just forgot to use, because it always feels bad. And of course, the store was out of baby bok choy, so I got full-size bok choy, but I got one that was kind of on the small side, so. But we have to now, oh, there's little babies inside there. We have to now break it up and wash them out. Bok choy, I really quite like. One of the top leafy greens in my book. It's a cooking green, as opposed to a salad green, typically eaten cooked instead of fresh. I'm sure you've encountered bok choy. Baby bok choy is super, super popular in things. So they're these little cute, they're like just this part. They're these cute little things. They're really quite tender. Some of that dirt off of there. They're usually less dirty than the big ones. The big ones tend to accumulate, as they get bigger, they tend to accumulate more dirt in between the leaves, which is an artifact of the fact that they push up through the dirt. So they inevitably capture some dirt in between the leaves. So we're giving them a rinse on the inside of the ribs there. I'll just take all of them rather than do them one at a time, because that's foolish. Vegetables that come in layers like this often have that problem because they sprout in the dirt, and as they grow, they push through the dirt. They don't push up and then spread out, they spread out just below the surface and then push through. So this is your the structure of your basic bok choy leaf. Big, thick stem bit, leafy bit. They cook differently, so you cut it right there, and you stack up your leafy bits and you stack up your stemmy bits. If you can just chuck them in without splitting them like this, but either your stemmy bits will be a bit under or your leafy bits will be a bit over by the time you get to eating them. Because the leaves cook a lot like spinach leaves, and the stems cook more like a celery. They don't taste like a celery, but they cook more like a celery, where you need to give them a little bit more time. Ooh, our annatto has turned its water a lovely shade of orange. If I was doing this with baby bok choys, I would cut each one in half, like each individual bok choy, just slice the whole thing right down the middle because they're a lot more tender, and as a result, don't need really any extra care and attention. These guys need a little bit more care and attention. Like what I did with this one, where I just kind of split it and call it a day. This can be done with regular, like full-size bok choy like this, or baby bok choy. I would recommend baby bok choy, but there is no reason, just because they're cute and I think they're a little bit easier to cook. And these leaves will shrink down, but they won't shrink down that much, so we're gonna go ahead and chop them into sort of big chunks. And the stemmy bits can go in there because they are more tender, being the little small pieces. Oop, lost one. Those are all the parts. Let's go back and check on our annatto. It has turned its water a deep orange. And I can smell it. So that's a good sign. I'm going to take it off of its heat and let it kind of just hang out in the hot water and rest. Because we've got another thing to do. This is one I've never done before, and the recipe does not recommend it. In fact, the recipe makes no mention of it. It says to acquire these pre-fried. Oh well. I'm going to fry them myself. Dab of oil. And a dab of hot. Oh my goodness, Saizen, where is my glass? I broke the glass. I dropped my whiskey glass while I was putting dishes away today, and it fell like 2 inches, but it completely shattered, like just pulverized. It was terrible. Thank you for the moisten. Mmm. Moist. Oil, heat. Before I oil heat too much, let's take a peek. Yeah. Okay. That's coming along well. Yeah, it wasn't a huge loss because it was a Goodwill glass, but I had bits of glass all over the place. That was not that long ago. I don't have any peanut oil. I should be frying these in peanut oil, but these are just peanuts. These are unsalted roast peanuts, which I will be frying, hopefully, and not burning. Because this calls for fried peanuts. Oh, some of these anatos have burst. Interesting. Hopefully that actually works this time. Last time I did the anato, it was super underwhelming and disappointing. And I was like, this stuff is a waste. So this time I'm giving it more chance. We can't walk away from the peanuts too much because they will, in fact, burn. Nuts burn very, very quickly. So we're gonna watch these before I move on to anything else. This is a fun. I can't remember what it's called. There's a Japanese dish that I can't remember the name of. It's like a stew, but it's cooked like this, and the whole point of it is that it's cooked like this, where it's instead of throwing everything into a pot and stewing it together the way like a European style stew, all the different parts of it are cooked individually. Each one is cooked in its own separate way. So it's not a stew because it's not stewed, but each individual element is cooked its own separate way to its own perfect ideal point, and then they're all assembled into the finished dish. Where you could never get these things to all cook that way if they were all in the same pot cooking together. Some would be overcooked, some would be undercooked, and that's essentially what I'm doing here. The meat needs to be stewed for ages, seared and stewed for ages, and it developed this rich, thick broth over here. If the bok choy leaves were in there, they would wilt away to nothing. We want to get a sear on our eggplant, some nice surface browning, but we couldn't do that because if we seared them in the pan with the meat, we would have seared them at the same time as the meat. We would have been removing stuff. So they're going to get seared in their own separate pan on the side. All right, I am watching the peanuts. I'm standing here focusing on these peanuts because I really, really don't want to burn the peanuts. This is also very emblematic of, in my opinion, Filipino cuisine. Let's not put that there. That burner was recently hot. This takes elements from all over the world. Beef came from Europe. Peanuts came from South America. Annatto, doesn't annatto come from? I think that also comes from the Americas. Yeah, tropical Americas. Bok choy comes from Asia. I'm not sure where eggplants originate. Um, The only continent we're missing really is Africa. The only continent we're missing here is Africa. Probably Australia. We're missing Australia. Australia always misses out. And NATO. Annatto. Which is here. Annatto seed. This is the stuff that makes cheddar cheese orange. I hate it. If you ever want to work with it, buy the powdered stuff. I bought the whole stuff literally the last time I made this recipe and hated it. And now we're back to doing this recipe again, and I'm hating it. And I'm wishing I just had the powdered stuff because I could take a scoop of it, chuck it in the soup there, and be done. Instead of having to, here it is, being steeped, turning my water nice and orange. We're going to strain out the seeds because they're inedible. Even boiled, they're as hard as pieces of gravel. The boiling just extracts the red and a little bit of flavor. Are you still hot? No, you're fine. I hate this stuff. And they sell it pre-powdered. They put it through a grinder and grind it into a completely fine powder that does the same thing as this stupid steeped version. So just get that. Just get that. Why not just get that? Yeah. Unclear. Or as I said earlier when I was starting this, just use some saffron, because then saffron also gives you some flavor to work with. I can't tell that this stuff has any flavor. I bet if I tasted this liquid right now, I would taste the flavor of whatever annatto tastes like. But it's not, and it smells nothing like saffron. But what it's doing is it's giving us color. My peanuts are sizzling. Ooh, and browning. Ooh, and I think they're burning a little bit. I think we're done. Let's get them out of there into a metal bowl, since they are blazing hot, but I want to get them out of the pan. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of natto either. In fact, unfair. That's unfair of me. I have not tasted it. So I cannot say I don't like it. What I can say is it does not appeal to me, but I have not tasted it. Those guys are going to live on the stove top because they're too hot to move anywhere that isn't a metal surface. I've seen it, and I've heard people describe it, and it doesn't strike me as something that I'm there for. Marmite is also widely maligned, but I think that people are just misusing Marmite. Because the flavor of Marmite comes from something that people like. It's just that it's much, much too concentrated in the Marmite. It's because it's yeast extract, and people like the taste of yeast. It's savory. Yeasts are used in flavorings, and also they give bread a lot of its flavor. Problem with Marmite is that it's super over concentrated. It was originally spent brewer's yeast. Now I think it's made custom. And spent brewer's yeast is also, well, not spent brewer's yeast, but excess brewer's yeast is also where bread makers got their yeasts because the bakers couldn't maintain yeast populations because they're constantly killing them by baking them. But the brewers always have yeast on the go because their process keeps the yeast alive. It uses the live yeast. We have bread. We have beer to thank for bread. I'm going to sear off my. I'm going to get this hot. I'm going to sear off my eggplants next. But yes, that's my opinion on Marmite. Yes, thank you again, beer. Beer has done so much for society. It's amazing. But that's my opinion on Marmite. It's just used improperly. You should use it more like. Kind of want to make these pieces smaller. I'll do that while I'm thinking of it. I would use it more like a stock concentrate or like miso, where it's this concentrated savory bomb, rather than spread it on a piece of toast. I don't know where spreading it on a piece of toast came from. That seems like the worst way to utilize it. Maybe we'll do Marmite experiments someday. That'd be fun. But it's like bitters. You like bitters, but you wouldn't drink them straight. They're much too concentrated. You gotta cut it into something, right? You'd never drink bitters straight, right? Looks knowingly, looks forlornly. You hot yet? You look hot. The oil is rippling. But yeah, you can also eat Marmite on toast if you want to suffer. Yeah. Okay. The eggplant. I was chopping with the camera on the wrong side while you guys are watching oil heat up in a pan. Professional. Okay. I should get some paper towels ready. We will deposit the finished eggplants on a folded over paper towel to get rid of any extra oil, because eggplant is a sponge and will suck up any excess oil that it can get a hold of. Where did I put my new jug of oil? I bought one because I knew that one that I just finished out had just a dribble on it. But where did I deposit the new one when I did bought it? Because I'm going to need it. Sunst. Sunch. Oh, I see it. It is behind my monitor. Pardon my reach. Get it open now. What the heck? Okay. Okay. Because we're going to need more oil because I can already tell our eggplant has sponged the heck out of the oil that was in there. Sadly, eggplant always loses its purple when you give it a high heat fry. It goes right to brown. Too bad, because it's really a nice color. It's just super, super not heat stable, plainly. We're using this pan, starting with the eggplant, but we're using this pan to pre-cook all of our sub-elements now, and then we're going to set them back into their bowls and await the finished product when we assemble them. Probably should have done the eggplant last. I'm not sure why I decided to do it first, because then I could have used the excess oil in the pan. Oh well. If you're doing this, I suggest eggplant be the third item instead of the first item in the pan. Well, I'm actually going to do that since I've got a little bit left. Since I've got a little bit left over here, I'm going to. Could have done the peanuts in this pan too, and then we could have saved that oil on that one as well. That would have been a good. Since I have some eggplant left, I am going to remove these guys onto their waiting paper towel now. And then we will do the beans and the bok choy stems in the pan here. And then we will do the other part of the eggplant to sop up the excess oil rather than re-oiling and re-oiling. So a little bit of grapeseed oil. Grapeseed oil is my favorite high heat saute oil because it is very flavorless. So you just get the flavor of the thing that you are cooking. These guys have a lot more moisture in them and give you a hard sizzle. That's a situation where I wish I had an open flame, because then I could do the toss and still be getting extra heat from the bottom. I'm going to give this a pinch of salt. So far I have not salted anything aside from one stock cube in with the meat. But these guys, ooh, we're getting nice little browning on the surfaces too, which is great. These guys are going to be my first add salt. And we're cooking them until they're tender crisp. The stemmy parts take a little bit to get there. While they're taking their little bit, I'm going to take another peek at the meat. The meat's smelling really good. We might actually pop the heat up on it, get it a little bit more vigorous, and then take the top off and let it cook down a bit, because we're going to be adding more liquid to it eventually. Oop. Shoot. Don't mind that one. If you're using this footage as a guide in a professional restaurant, do not pick up the piece that you dropped on the floor just now and put it back into the pan. If you are cooking for yourself at home, well, you know how clean your floor is. Use your judgment. But this stuff, this is how you cook bok choy, in my opinion. High heat, toss, toss, toss. You get little brown edges, but it cooks, but it retains this a crisp to it. If these go floppy, we've gone too far. I also really like this pan for this reason, for this exact reason of what I'm doing with it now, where I can go toss. It's got that nice sloped edge, and it's the perfect angle for my style. I've done this with some other pans, and I tend to lose bits of it over the edge. I almost never lose anything using this pan, because it's got that perfect slope on it. I forgot whose pan this was. Was this the emerald pan? This was the emerald pan, which I got from Goodwill. Top quality. Emerald does good pans, I guess. I should say, Martha Stewart does good pans under the Emerald brand name. Because Emerald sold his brand to Martha Stewart. We're gonna get them out of there before they go too much farther. There's going to be a little bit of carryover heat here in the bowl, just because they have hot oil on them. The pan still looks oily to me, so I'm going to go ahead and drop the beans next. The beans, obviously, not wet to start with. Taking the top off of my simmering meat and bringing the heat up a little bit to try to get it started. I think we actually need a touch more oil in our beans. I think too much of it went with the a little bit too much of it went with the bok choy. Okay. Let's get our eggplant in its bowl. Do I want to salt the beans? I don't think I want to salt the beans. I just think I want to get them nice and... Again, we're going for a tender crisp on this, which is why we're not throwing them into the stew where they would just turn into sog. It doesn't matter if these vegetables that we're doing cool off in the meantime, because they're going to eventually be added to this while it's still hot and be brought back up to temperature. So I'm fully content by cooking them in advance like this for later addition to our stew, which still needs some time. I'm actually going to put the lid back on it. I think I made a mistake by bringing the lid off that time. Now, you know what I haven't gotten started yet is the rice. There's supposed to be rice alongside this dish, so we probably should do that next. The rice does not want to be cooked super far in advance because it should be nice, well-cooked rice when we serve it. The surfaces of the beans are getting a little bit blistery, which is exactly what I'm looking for. I want this to be nice, high heat. So the surfaces get a little bit blistered and a little bit interesting before the beans go completely floppy from the cook. Because nobody likes a floppy green bean. Poor American children, for ages and ages, have been trained to not like green beans because they eat canned green beans and they're terrible. And they're terrible because canned green beans are always wildly overcooked. Always. Don't overcook your green beans. It ruins green beans. And I'm doing what I said earlier, and I'm using the remaining oil to get our eggplants started. Let's flip them immediately before they've had a chance to do too much sponging on the one side. So that they can sponge on both sides this time. Oh, thank you for the moisten. Moist. Meat, garlic, onion. Blanch the yard long beans. We're not doing that. We're rapidly stir frying them because I want that texture. Blanch the bok choy. That one's weird to me. I disagree. Brown the eggplant in the pan. Peanuts, annatto, and sugar are coming up. There's more oil on this side of the pan, so I'm kind of trying to get the eggplants here to play with the oil a little bit. See that. Peanuts, eggplant, the other half of the bok choy, the annatto, which is cooled by now. Yes, so we need to strain that out just to save the liquid because we need just the liquid. Drop your measuring cup on the floor, directly on the floor. It's an important step. It's an important step. Let's see how much of this stuff we actually got. Hold back the stupid little floaties. Just shy of 3 tablespoons of annatto extract. Again, don't do this. Don't do what I did. Get the pre-done stuff. How are you looking on the backside? Nice and brown. Nice and brown. Our pan is smoking. Whoa, that one burned a little bit. All y'all get back in there. We're just going to toss this around until they look... So if the pan's smoking, that has to be the eggplant itself smoking because this pan's not hot enough to be smoking the grapeseed oil. Okay, good enough. Again, it's hot. I'm going to put it in a metal bowl and keep the metal bowl here. Put that guy there. Let's do some rice. Because we need some rice. And our meat is still throttling. I don't think the meat's tender yet is the thing. Shiny. I see you lurking there. Peeking over the edge. Welcome in. I should take one of the pieces of meat out of our... Why do I keep putting my pot holder back in the drawer? Like an idiot. Every time I use it, I put it back in the drawer. Taking out one of our pieces of meat, and I'm going to test it for tenderness. Over here on the board. But welcome in. We're making a thing. It's cooked to the middle, which it better be at this point. It's been boiling for an hour. Cuts pretty easily with a sharp knife. Actually, actually, that's pretty tender. I think dicing it up the way we did has paid off. So since the meat is in fact tender, I don't have to worry about it sitting here and tenderizing. I can just let it bubble away as it will while I push forward with everything else. We need rice, and I didn't put it in the rice cooker, so we're going to do the quick rice method. And while we're doing the quick rice, I can assemble our sauce. I say quick rice. It's not any quicker than any other rice. It's just that it's mindless. Well, okay, it is quicker. It's quicker than the rice cooker can do. We're doing our big pot of hot water, boil it like pasta style. Which I'm not even going to wait for the boiler. I'm just going to plunk it in right away. I need to get more rice. We are down to that much rice in our big jug of rice. Which is, you know, several meals worth still, but can't let it run out, then we don't have any rice. Okay. I'm optimistic. I was already optimistic. I'm upbeat because the meat turned out tender already, which I thought it was going to take a little bit longer than that, which is why I diced it up. I was a little bit worried. But since it is, I'm confident in pushing forward. We don't need to stall at all. Amazing. I'm making a stew, and there's been zero stalling, and there's going to be zero stalling. Unless that rice doesn't boil as fast as I want it to. Then we'll have to stall. Anyways, let's come over here. Get out we can use a glass bowl. We need a cornstarch. We need a cornstarch slurry ready to go as well, because we're going to end up thickening this. We don't have to cook this all the way down to thicken it like we would with a, like, French stew. We just needed to cook long enough to soften up the meat and render out the connective tissues for all that flavor that's in them. Those veins we found in the meat probably wouldn't have quite rendered out either. Those things are pretty tough, so I'm glad I got rid of them. But we're going to get a cornstarch slurry, which is just cool water and cornstarch. Cool water hydrates the cornstarch, prehydrates the cornstarch, so that when we put it into our hot broth, it doesn't clump. I've mentioned this before, and I'm just mentioning it again. We're going to put our annatto extract into a bowl with peanut butter. How much peanut butter does this want? A cup of peanut butter. That's a lot of peanut butter. I've got an the label peeled off, but I've got an all-natural creamy peanut butter here that has exactly one ingredient, and that ingredient is peanuts. This doesn't even have any salt in it. I picked this up after I realized that the all-natural mainstream brands of peanut butter get away with calling themselves all-natural by replacing the hydrogenated oils they used to use, which are the not naturals, with palm oil. Which, if you're not aware, I have a mild palm oil allergy. It makes my throat hurt. So that was a unpleasant discovery. The all-natural versions are shittier than the all like Skippy. I'm calling you out, Skippy. Get the palm oil out of your damn peanut butter. Of course, this stuff has no stabilizers in it because it only has one ingredient, peanuts, which is great for naturalness, but not so great for it not separating. It separates quite badly. It's hard to use as like a spread. So I'll probably go back to the hydrogenated oil versions. But yeah, people put peanuts in, or not peanuts, they put palm oil in every damn thing these days, and I hate it. Tiny Whisk to the rescue. Now the water here should help us develop a there were some definitely very separated peanut clumps at the bottom. Which I'm having a little bit of a hard time breaking up. Tiny Whisk is having to be tiny potato masher. Oop, 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 shoot! I saw it a second before it happened. Our rice foamed over. Oh well. Distracted by tiny potato masher over here. It doesn't need to be perfectly smooth because we're going to mix it into that stew anyways, and the heat will help break it up over there. Okay, more of the liquidy part, please, of the peanut butter. Okay, that should be plenty of that. Get that all tiny whisked in. Add our sugar. Oh, not even that much sugar. About that much sugar. This is unsalted peanut butter as well, so I'm going to add some salt. Since we have not been adding salt to most anything else along the way. Tiny Whisk is being overwhelmed by this peanut butter. Poor Tiny Whisk. He's all clumped up. He did his job as Tiny Potato Masher well, but now this is too thick for him. It's seized up with the addition of the sugar. We're going to have to use normal-sized fork to mash this the rest of the way. Interesting element that I noticed while I was perusing the recipe and also while I was making the recipe. There's nothing spicy in any element of this except for a little bit of black pepper, which I am now adding now. But there's no hot peppers in any part of this, which I find a little bit strange, personally. Tastes like peanut butter, but the annatto at least made it kind of a different color. Peanuts. By the way, if you're allergic to peanuts, don't make this recipe. It's very peanutty. If you're not sure if you're allergic to peanuts, I suggest finding out. It's a pretty nasty allergy. I suggest finding out without doing a taste test. Although I would hope that if you are allergic to peanuts, you would know by now, because again, it's one of those nasty ones. Popping over to our stove. You can't really see it because it's in the back corner. If we switch our rice for our stew, we've lost quite a bit of the liquid from our stew. We might have to add more water. But it's time for the flavors to start joining this party. I'm going to move the bones. Oh, they've gone completely through as well. Move the bones so that I can really get this stirred up. The bones can be decorative later on the plate. There's still quite a bit of liquid in here too. So I don't know that we need to add any more liquid to it. I also don't know that we need the cornstarch. This is reasonably thickened without it. Move stuff, move stuff. I want a green onion, even though this recipe does not request one. I think it will be attractive on the plate at the end, so we will do that. While the stew gets to know itself. My green onion's a little bit wilty. The ones I have planted are coming up quite nicely, and soon they will be my primary source once again, rather than the store-bought ones. Although they are the store-bought ones. They're the store-bought ones that I replanted. Let's assume that's done, turn it off, but then give it a sample using a spoon to catch a couple of grains. It's actually a little bit under. It's slightly dente, so I'm not going to take it off right now. I'm going to let it cool down while it's bruttling. Our uncooked bok choy tops are going in here. To get all nice and wilty. I'm going to turn the heat up just a smidge and pop the lid back on that. Get these green onions off to the side. All these various elements. Yeah, I don't know that we're going to use the cornstarch because I think this is thick enough. The final ingredient is bagoong almang, which I happen to have right here. You can't see it, it's too small. Which I happen to have right here. I got the right one this time. Last time I got this stuff, and I'll show you what I got last time, and you'll see the confusion. Last time I got this one. Shrimp fry. Sauteed shrimp fry. Literally the same graphics. The difference being this one's a garish shade of pink, and this one's sort of reddish brown. This is the uncooked variety. It's just cured in salt. And the recipes say, use this kind. Don't use the other kind, use this kind. So I got the right one. It smells very similar, but I assume it's got more dimension to the flavor. Let's take a peek at our bok choys. Ah, yes, see. Nice and wilty. All that volume, just like when you add kale or a collard green or a spinach, all that volume just disappears. It becomes very, very quiet. But yeah, our stew base here has gotten quite thick, so I think that I think I'm going to just completely skip the cornstarch, which is fine. And it's going to waste. It's going to waste, but Can't be helped. I shouldn't have prepped it so far in advance. Let's move the board, because we don't need the board anymore. I think we're coming up to it, so let's grab a plate. We're going to need the wide plate with the dish bottom for this, for sure, on account of it being a soupy stew thing. Let's also get our rice strained. This spatula. The rice sticking a tiny bit. I didn't stir it at all. I relied entirely on the agitation of the boiling to get it stirred up in there. So I'm sure that's a contributing factor to why it's a little bit of sticking. Gently, 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 so as to not mash it. We're going to get it right into our serving bowl, serving plate. In the Japanese style of it being on half the plate, and then the main event dish can be on the other half of the plate so that you can see all of it. Classic. Rice. Rice. Okay, okay. The stew is basically done. We're going to add our bok choy stems to it. Stir them in. They don't need any more special treatment. They've already got their special treatment. Our stew is actually starting to stick to the bottom, so I'm going to take the heat off, and that means that we are definitely at the thickness where I don't want to thicken it anymore. Okay, so for decorative plating purposes, where are my tongs? Tongs. For decorative plating purposes, we're going to grab our marrow bone. And plunk it right there. I'm going to stir the eggplant in as well. I don't think that needs to be necessarily super separate, but it is a little delicate on account of it being cooked eggplant. So let's gently stir it in, get it sauced up. Okay, okay, good enough. You'll notice the beans aren't going in because I think the beans look very pretty not covered in the sauce. Where's my scooper? Just got a scooper out. Here's my scooper. I do want a little bit extra of the sauce to kind of fill in some gaps in the plating. And then the beans can kind of live on the plate to the side a little bit. Let's not completely hide all of the eggplant pieces. I like the looks of some of them being visible. The remaining beans are going to go in the pot because they don't need to be separate for plating or for typical eating. I just thought they would look nice plating. And honestly, they need a drizzle of sauce over the top of them as well, so they look more included. Our fried peanuts get sprinkled over the top. And the remainder get just tossed into the pot. Our green onion gets sprinkled over the top. We take the peanut off of our marrow bone. Actually, we clear it away a little bit. Okay. We're coming down to it. We grab our tiny spoon, regular sized spoon, rinse the cornstarch off of it. That one wasn't really very dirty because all I had was cornstarch and water, so we're fine. We take a scoop of our bagoong, bagoong almang. And we nestle that there. Don't put it in the middle. You're supposed to put it a little bit on the side, and you add it to bites as you go. Ooh. Okay. I understand the difference now. This stuff tastes way better than the stuff that's just salted brine shrimp in nothing. Oh, dang. Okay, yeah, 100%. And I believe that's the reason why there's not a lot of salt in the dish in general, because you season it as you eat it with little bits of this stuff. Let's clean up our edges. I also mentioned earlier that there's no spicy element to this, and I want a spicy element if I can have just a little bit. If I can betray the recipe for just a moment, I'm going to give it a scoop of sambal oelek. On the other side over here by the marrow bone. For the same reason that I can add it a bit at a time. And there you have it. There's the thing. What do you think? Is it dinner? we still watching? Um, let's go take our picture. Let's go take our picture. Decide what the best plating angle is. I think this with the bone toward the front. Oh, I didn't get my tablet out at all. Hope it's charged. It is well charged. But let's take our snaps. I haven't opened this in a while, I guess, because there's a lot of notifications coming through, and they make the dinger vibrate. Okay. Let's roll back and give it a tasterino. Tasteroonie. It's gotten quite thick. I'm not sure I need a spoon for it at all, even though it's like a stew. I'm not sure where to start, except that we should just dig in. So, try to get a little bit of everything in my first bite. Eggplant bean. Meat? Is there a meat? There's one. Good thing I took pictures. I mangled it immediately. Mm. Okay. There are still some chewy bits in the meat for sure. Mm. Thank you for the moisten. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Moist. So I could have done a better job trimming the meat, I think, is the biggest issue. It is tender, but there's a few little bits in it that I think could have been trimmed out. I almost wonder if this would be easier to do with short rib. Shank is the traditional piece. Mm. Those fried peanuts are delightful. They've got this char flavor, but not like burnt. But it really jumps out at you through all the rest of this. The whole dish is actually not very salty at all. Bits of the shrimp paste. Mm-hmm. It needs little bits of that mixed in with it. Not a ton. Stuff's pretty strong. But the flavor benefits from little bits of this. And it's probably added at this point like this because it would lose its punch if you cooked it down with the other things. Because it's not shrimp paste. Compared to like, I don't know if I have a shrimp paste. Compared to like a Chinese style shrimp paste, this stuff, this I keep forgetting the name. Bagoong are actually just tiny, tiny baby brine shrimps. They're so delicate that I think that if you cook them, they would just fall apart completely. Mm. So the dominant flavors here are a savory beef and the peanut with these little bright spikes all over the place. Having the individual vegetables cooked separately and then assembled gives you this huge variety of textures as you're rolling through it. The beans are this tender crisp. The bok choy is almost like pieces of celery, but it doesn't taste like celery. They're uh, they're even more tender than the beans. The eggplant is like just on the verge of going to mush. It's soft, soft. Probably overcooked that a little bit, but the meat, while tender, has some resistance to it. The little chewy bits aren't my favorite, but they're not too bad. The rice is rice. The fried peanuts give these little crunch notes to it, as well as this interesting char element to the flavor. And if you just add little bits of the sauces from the corners to your bites, it varies up the overall experience as you're going. Now, sambal oelek is not traditional here. I added that, but good. This is giving me some ideas too. Because the whole concept of cooking all these various elements and then assembling them into a dish like this, where it looks like they're just all part of the thing, but they all have these interesting textural contrasts because of the way they were separately cooked. I really like that. I think we can go places with that. Anyways, we had a bit of a quiet day today, I think. I'm very pleased with the dish. Oops, that's the wrong camera. I'm very pleased with the dish we concocted. This will be a very hearty and satisfying dinner for me. Um, those of you who are here, I hope you enjoyed watching me make it and roll through it. I'm surprised we didn't end up with any standing around stalling waiting for a stew to boil, but everything kind of worked pretty well. The only thing I think I would change in this completely is that I would give myself more time at the beginning to trim the meat. There are some bits that I definitely should probably have gotten off of there. Um, let's see who we can. Oh my goodness, we're gonna go see Jen the Human. Snap decision. We're gonna go see Jen the Human, who is playing Return of the Obra Dinn. I love this game. I love this game. If you've never played Return of the Obra Dinn, I'm gonna tell you now. Don't watch someone else do it. If you have played it, you already know why. I love this game though. It's a deductive mystery. Yeah, it's a deductive mystery of a ship that has returned to port with no crew, and you've got a magic pocket watch that lets you see how people died if you can find their remains. So you've got to deduce. You've got to work backwards, figure out what happened to everyone, and it's got this unfolding story as you piece through it. Terrible things happen to the crew, and it's made by the same developer who made Papers, Please, and it's, in his own words, way larger in scope than he was aiming for when he started the project. So don't expect the next game to be like this. Expect it to be more on the Papers, Please side, where it's a little bit narrower. We've got the countdown happening already. I've been gushing about Oberdin. Let's say hi to Jen. Let's tell her all about what we had, and I'll see you next time. Bam!